Almost 55 years ago, April 2nd, 1971, Riverside, California. Riverside Police Department gets a call to investigate a burglary in progress at 4792 Ottawa Street. This is in the nighttime, approximately 9:15 to 9:30 p.m. Officers Carroll Teel and Leonard Christiansen were dispatched to check out the call. They drove to 4792 Ottawa Street, and as police typically did back then, they parked in the driveway and were about to get out to investigate. Suddenly, without warning, some guys that were hiding in bushes opened fire on them. They instantly killed Carroll Teel. They wounded Leonard Christiansen. Officer Leonard managed to return fire, and he made an emergency call on his two-way to dispatch. That call is still available today. You can hear it on YouTube. And other officers came to assist. Police came as quickly as they could. They searched the area. There was no one. The scumbags who did it took a hike and left. As I said, Officer Carroll Teel was killed instantly. Officer Leonard Christiansen was put in an ambulance, taken to a hospital, but he died. The call was obviously a ruse in order to ambush police. Detectives followed up on leads, and weeks later they arrested Gary Lawton, who was an activist organizer, Nehemiah Jackson, and Zariba Larry Gardner, and all were put on trial. There were 3 trials that occurred. 2 of them were declared mistrials. The third one, in 1975, ended in no convictions. Gary Lawton was acquitted. Jackson and Gardner, there was simply not enough evidence to really follow through, so there was no convictions, basically. The 3 defendants, as far as I know, were linked to the Vietnam Veterans Against the War. Keep in mind when this was 1971. This incident occurred about a year after the Kent State University shootings by the National Guard. The Black Panthers were very active at this time, as were the Students for a Democrat Society, basically protesting the war. My understanding from what I saw is that the Black Panthers had a presence in Riverside. So, of course, attention was drawn to them. But there were never any convictions. That's the most heartbreaking thing about this whole situation. Let me show you the graves. They're right here. Leonard Christiansen and Carroll Teel were buried very close to each other. This here is Leonard's grave. Leonard was born October 1st, 1940 in Denver, Colorado. He was the son of immigrants from Denmark. As I say, he was murdered April 2nd, 1971 by what police believe were radical Marxist, leftist killers. But it was never proven. There just wasn't enough evidence, I guess. Some of the evidence that was gathered was not really passable in court. I don't want to get into the details. I don't really have details. And I'm not in a position to say that Gary Lawton, Nehemiah Jackson, and Zariba Gardner were definitely guilty. Honestly, I don't know. My suspicions are still against them. I know that Lawton's widow is still alive. To this day, she insists no, they were set up. They were falsely accused. So who knows? But Leonard's granddaughter, Courtney, put together a video presentation on what happened to these men, her grandfather and his partner. It can be viewed on YouTube. I will put a link in the description. You can see that if you want. I know that during the trials, because war protesters were involved, these guys were linked to the Vietnam Veterans Against the War. The usual rabble-rousers at the time were making public statements and making a lot of public noise. For example, Bobby Seale, who together with Huey Newton founded the Black Panthers, he was making a big noise publicly about how these three men were falsely accused. Angela Davis, who was a well-known Marxist, she actually ran for president at least a couple of times, president of the United States, on the Communist Party. She was making a lot of noise, and other people were making noise. Bobby Seale and Angela Davis are still alive today. They're very old, but they're around. But yeah, these poor officers who had, they had nothing to do with the war in Vietnam or anything. They were just doing their jobs. Leonard was 30 years old when he died. And his wife is right here. She died just 2 years ago. She lived to be, looks like 82. So she had to raise the children by herself because these animals, these savage beasts, took away her husband. So rest in peace, Officer Leonard and Miss Janice. In fact, let me put a stone on Leonard's grave. Brave and intrepid. My salute to you, Officer Leonard, and my condolences to your lovely family. Over here, just 2 graves down, is the grave of Paul Teel. The officers were buried side by side. Their funeral involved thousands of attendees. The city of Riverside came out in mourning. Many, many police officers drove from other departments in order to attend this funeral. So you can imagine what this place looked like 54 and a half years ago. All right, over here is Paul Teel. And he gets a stone. Brave and intrepid. Officer Paul was 25 years old when he died. He was born July 20th, 1945 in Texas. Murdered April 2nd, 1971. So, I've said this before on other videos, justice often isn't done in this life, but there is an afterlife. The great white throne judgment will judge all evildoers. Even if they get away with things today in this life, even if they have clever lawyers that get them off, believe me, they haven't escaped justice. Paul Teel answered the call of himself. He gave all, and a part of America died. Rest in peace, Officer Paul. Riverside will never forget you.